The Halloween season is here, and what a way to celebrate this spooky season with talking about the best horror game protagonists. Not all of them are heroes. Some are just surviving while others try to help people. But most importantly, these characters are the ones who make us feel their fear, their pain, and their determination to survive the horrifying world they live in. Here are what I consider 7 of the best horror game protagonists who defined the genre. Leon S. Kennedy is a character that is the perfect blend of courage and charm. I included him in this list because I had to. To me, he is the face of survival horror games. What makes Leon special is how he grows from being a naive rookie cop into one of the most capable heroes in survival horror genre. His journey from Resident Evil 2 to all the way to 6 and potentially the new 9th game gives him a lot of depth as a character and puts him on a mission of survival that we can relate to because of how well written and sarcastically funny he is. His sense of humor and iconic one-liners balance the tension perfectly and gives us, the player, a small moment of relief in the middle of all the chaos and all the scares. My favorite iteration of him is in Resident Evil 2 as he is the most relatable he has been to me. Seeing him being a rookie police officer on his first day at work, at the same time a zombie outbreak starting, is like a legendary setting in any media. His appearance is so cool, so for that I will give props to Resident Evil 4. His character design in that is just so iconic. I love Resident Evil games and Leon is definitely a staple of the franchise. He will always be in the conversation of not just best horror video game characters, but best video game characters in general. James Sunderland from Silent Hill 2 is next on my list. He is literally the emotional opposite of Leon. He's fragile, guilt-ridden, and deeply human in a very realistic way. Silent Hill 2 isn't just a simple horror game, it's a psychological descent into one man's grief and denial, all wrapped in a fevered dream of a survival game. James' journey through Silent Hill is a metaphor for his guilt and punishment. The layers this game has is just incredible, and every monster he faces represents some part of his inner torment. James is not a hero. He doesn't have that heroism and traits that will save someone. He might help, but it's all in favor of progressing his own journey. He's a deeply flawed person, and that's exactly what makes him unforgettable to me. His vulnerability, confusion, and tragic backstory elevates Silent Hill 2's narrative from just another survival horror into one of the most powerful stories ever told in gaming. James is relatable. He is human with inner demons, and he's punishing himself for what he has done. He is literally walking proof that horror doesn't always come outside, sometimes it lies within someone. It's hard to talk about great protagonists without mentioning Joel and Ellie. Together, they redefine what a horror game leading duo can be. The Last of Us and its sequel are my favorite games ever, but for this list I am choosing the first game, as their dynamic works better for this list rather than part 2. And you can guess why. Certain someone is missing for the majority of that game. Anyways, this game isn't just pure horror in a traditional sense. It's more of an emotional survival story in a horrifying and haunting world. What makes Joel and Ellie stand out is their relationship and their personalities. They complement each other so well. The father-daughter dynamic that grows between them becomes the emotional core of the game. Joel is hardened and his cynical worldview contrasts perfectly with Ellie's youthful optimism and rebelliousness. The way Naughty Dog wrote these characters within its narrative and their character developments from hating each other at the start of the game to embracing who they are and loving them for it by the end is just masterful. There's a reason Joel and Ellie is always in the conversation of best written characters ever. Their bond turns a world filled with horrors and chaos into something painfully human, something really beautiful, and something that is so special to me. Few characters in gaming history have made me cry, and they are both masterfully created characters. Six may not say a word throughout Little Nightmares, but her presence and what she represents in the story is really powerful. She's very small and consistently surrounded by grotesque figures, yet she never stops moving and never gives up. She represents survival in its purest form. She's desperate, instinctive, and sometimes morally grey. What makes her stand out as a horror protagonist is how the game never explicitly tells you who she is or why she's there. Yet, you understand her struggles through her body language and the eerie world around her. There's something human to her character that makes you relate in her struggles. It's also a metaphor for young people living in a world full of hungry rich people who are ready to chew and spit out the younger generation for their own interests. So to me, she represents all of the younger generation in one character. But by the end, you realize she's not just surviving the nightmare, she's becoming part of it. Six is silent, but her story speaks volumes, and her design, with that iconic yellow raincoat, makes her instantly recognizable and one of the best designed characters in survival horror gaming history. Alan Wake is one of the most unique horror protagonists I've ever seen. A writer whose own words literally shape reality and bring nightmares. In Alan Wake, and especially Alan Wake 2, his journey crosses paths between fiction and reality, light and darkness, literally. What makes Alan so compelling is how his creativity becomes both his weapon and his curse. He's constantly battling monsters and creatures, but most importantly, his own mind, trying to separate what's real from what he's written. This concept of a protagonist using a flashlight and words to fight darkness is just pure genius, and Remedy Entertainment knocked this idea out of the park in Alan Wake 2. Alan's fear and self-doubt really makes him relatable. Alan Wake isn't a traditional hero, he's a storyteller caught in his own nightmares, and I love every single second of the games he's in. Isaac Clarke is the definition of survival horror protagonist. What makes him unique is that he's resilient, but he's not a soldier or a fighter. He's an engineer thrown into one of the most terrifying situations imaginable. In Dead Space, Isaac is trapped aboard a spaceship filled with monstrous aliens, and what's truly terrifying is how isolated and vulnerable he feels throughout the games, especially in the first one. He starts off silent, but even without words, his desperation and terror are just clear to the player. By Dead Space 2, we see his trauma and mental collapse, making him one of the few horror game protagonists to show the long-term effects of surviving the horror he went through. This factor alone makes him stand out. Isaac is every bit as iconic as the other characters in this list because he represents the ultimate human response to fear. Fight back, shoot, and kill the aliens.
Resident Evil.
I know I included Leon S. Kennedy, but come on now. I have to include Jill Valentine in this list too. She's one of the original icons of survival horror, and Resident Evil deserves to be in this list again. In Resident Evil 1 and 3, she proves herself as one of the most smartest and toughest characters in gaming. Unlike many early horror leads, Jill isn't defined by fear, but she's defined by her determination and how she overcomes it. Apart from being a sandwich...
That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
You're right.
Her background as a member of STARS makes her competent, but it's her instinct to survive and composure under pressure that make her stand out. Facing off against Nemesis in Resident Evil 3 is one of survival horror game's most stressful experiences, and she still keeps her emotions and shit in check. She is strong and one of the coolest characters in gaming, and I gotta say, without Jill Valentine, the genre's depiction of strong female leads would look very different today. So, these are my 7 favorite horror game protagonists. Scary games and especially survival horror games have been making a comeback ever since Resident Evil 2 Remake, and I'm all here for it. Hopefully my list gave you some ideas as to what to play in the Halloween season. Let me know down below which horror game character is your favorite and why. As always, thanks for watching, but that's not it. There's more to this list, coming very soon.